Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dustin Kircher. I'm with MHP Nation. I got my partner here, Ben Dreicer. Thanks for joining us today. We have an amazing guest and someone that we've not had or a particular subject, which is cost segregation. So today we have Eden Markowitz. Eden Markowitz is a cost segregation expert with Madison Specs. They've had close to 20 years experience in the cost segregation field, and they provide top-notch experiences and service to their clients nationwide. Eden is also a licensed realtor and earned top performer awards with NB Elite Realty and the Dallas Real Producers in 2022. In addition, Eden is also has over 100 transactions in single family, fix and flip, and rental space over the last 6 years. So he's going to bring tons of knowledge. We're going to dive into the cost segregation field and learn how is that going to help us in the mobile home park world, and also for other investors that are listening to this show. So Eden, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a little bit. We finally got it on the books and we made it.
Well, thanks for coming in, and we look forward to this has been something that Ben and I have been talking about, and we're trying to figure out how does this work in the mobile home park field, because we understand the basics of it and with the multifamily, but how does it work in the mobile home park side?
Excited to break it down for you guys, and there's a lot of myths and question marks, and often get the information wrong. So hopefully we can get a lot of things cleared up today.
Yeah. So before we jump into like how this benefits on the mobile home park side, as I mentioned, you've had over 100 transactions on the single family side with fix and flips and rents over the last 6 years. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got into it.
About 6 years ago, I moved to Dallas. About 7.5 years ago. Always wanted to get into real estate, was doing some other things. Just had a passion for, watching everybody on social media get rich, and it looks all glamorous, and had some friends in real estate, so always was interested in that. So I actually started, with wholesaling, working for a company and doing acquisitions as a wholesaler. I did that for a couple of years, and we were just passing over contracts to other investors, and I was, thinking, hey, if they're making money, then there's more money to be made on the purchases, holding these properties. So partnered up. I didn't have too much money at the time, but I partnered up with someone who had a little bit more capital. He said, hey, if you find some deals, I'll help you fund them. So started buying some flips and some rentals using somebody else's money, pretty much $0 in on the deal. We had some local banks and some good relationships to help with lines of credit and funding, for long term. Excuse me. And that led to, I was like, oh, if I'm paying a realtor to list these properties, why don't I become a realtor too? So that led to getting licensed as a realtor. And then, by word of mouth, people were reaching out to me to list properties or to represent them on the buyer side. So it wasn't something that I was actually, pursuing, but things fell into my lap. Did some land deals for some investors, some larger deals, and things just kind of, I like to just learn a little bit about everything about real estate, because you never know, what you could use in your toolbox. So, just learning different things, always different strategies, different streams of revenue coming in. So started doing some flipping, buying some rental properties, actually did a bunch of seller financing where we buy houses cash and then sell them to end buyers who couldn't get mortgages. So we did about 35 of those in about a year and a half. So just
nice,
piecing together a little bit of everything. I mean, I know some people like to focus on one thing and just stay in their lane, and I kind of have like real estate ADD, so just like picking up little things in different asset classes, different ways to provide value, make money, and just grow portfolios and networking, and different conferences, meeting different people. You never know where things will lead you to. So it's been a good ride, and I'm definitely looking forward to more fun times in the real estate world.
Nice. And are you still picking up single family properties right now, or are you focused on the commercial side?
So I'm still doing a little bit here and there. The market is tightened up here in DFW. It's harder to buy, buy and holds, single family stuff. So with the interest rates and insurance and the competition, it's definitely slowed down. But I am buying here and there. A small portfolio of single family. So if the right deal comes my way, I'm interested. But also learning more about, getting deeper. I've been doing a lot for mobile home RV park clients of mine in the cost seg world. So learning, listening to podcasts like you guys, listening to some of your episodes, to learn more about this space has definitely piqued my interest in the mobile home park world as well.
Nice. Awesome. So let's get into the fun stuff and why I think most people are going to be tuning into the show for cost segregation. See, I can't even
Tough one, huh?
say
It's a full mouth.
it. So, and guys, Eden and myself are recovering from a cold right now. So I'm like choking on, and
Oh,
hopefully
man,
my
yeah.
cough attacks don't come out.
I'm
But
sipping on my tea here too.
so what is cost segregation?
Okay, so let's start from the basics. We'll build it up. So basically, anybody who owns any investment real estate, no matter what it is, single family, commercial properties, mobile home parks, apartment buildings, office buildings, um, you get tax deductions for owning that real estate every year, right? So commercial properties, basically where people are not sleeping. So office buildings, except for hotels, which are commercial properties, shopping centers, those depreciate on a 39-year cycle, right? So it's a long haul to get back, your deductions every year. It's about, 2.5%, of what you paid for the property, less the land value, which we'll talk about in a minute. But 39 years depreciation for anything that's non-residential for commercial. For any residential, single families, mobile home parks, you're on a 27.5-year depreciation schedule. So basically you take what you paid for the property, not what it appraises for or what you think the value is. I've had all kinds of crazy things over the years of people saying, oh, I bought it for 500, but it's worth 5 million. We depreciated at 5 million. It's not what it's worth or what you think it's worth. It's what you paid for it, right? So you take what you paid for the property less the land value, which land doesn't depreciate because nothing's happened to it. It's not going anywhere. It's not, gonna break down or anything. The land is the land, so you can't do that. So that's what we call depreciation basis is for the lifespan of the property. Now that starts over with every new owner. It doesn't make a difference if the property was just built, new construction, or it's 300 years old. That new depreciation lifespan starts with every new acquisition of the property. So it could change hands 3 or 4 times in 5 years, and the new owner's depreciation cycle will start again. So that's, benefits. They always say, real estate has made people a lot of people rich. One of the main reasons is because of the tax benefits, right? Besides for the appreciation of owning property, if you buy it right and holding on to it for a long time, usually the values are going to go up. The other side of the coin, which is, equally as beneficial, is that you're allowed to take these massive, what we call paper losses on the depreciation every year to offset the cash flow that you're making for that property or from other properties, or in certain cases, like we'll talk about a little bit later, if you're a real estate professional, you could use these losses to offset other gains that you're making personally or your spouses. So, it's an important aspect of real estate that, is talked about, but in my opinion, not talked about enough. I had been investing for a bunch of years and didn't know the ABCs of this, and a lot of people do. And, it's just an important thing to keep in mind always, the tax benefits of owning real estate. So that's the baseline. You're depreciating the property 27.5 or 39 years. Just divide it. I mean, take out a calculator, take your $1 million less your land. Let's say it's about 15%. Divide 850 by 39 or 27.5. And that's what your depreciation is going to be every year to offset some of the income that's coming in, right? So that's what we call straight line depreciation, which is great and awesome to own real estate. And you get your tax benefits every year, right? So that's what we call straight line depreciation. Now, it can get better than that, right? There are certain aspects of the property that are not going to last 39 years, right? I don't know if you guys have ever had in a house of yours or in a property, putting in carpet that lasts 39 years needs to give me that product, right? It's carpet in a multifamily or an appliance, or there's a lot of items that if we, sit down and think about it, these items are not going to last that long, right? So The IRS knows that, and every aspect, every piece of a property has its own lifespan, right? So the carpet's not going to last, the cabinets, the light fixtures, the concrete, everything has a lifespan of depreciation, right? So for the most part, on the interior, you're looking at flooring, most types of flooring, like vinyl flooring, carpets, cabinets, appliances, window treatments, a lot of the light fixtures. There's a lot of items on the interior of a property that are what we call 5-year property. And then on the exterior, you have 15-year land improvements. So that's concrete, landscaping, fences, there's signs on the exterior, there can be cameras. So there's a lot of, if you have a house with a pool or a multifamily with a pool, there could be built-in benches, right? There's a lot of things that are added onto the land, which are land improvements, and those depreciate on a 15-year life cycle. So those are the two main items that are not depreciating over 27 and a half or 39 years, but rather can be accelerated to 5 and 15 years, right? So the way to explain this to a 5-year-old is big house made out of Lego, right?
Yep.
And take a hammer to smash it, and then there's a million pieces all over the floor, right? And imagine you have 3 buckets to put all these pieces back into, right? You have a 5-year bucket, a 15-year, and then your 37, 39 or 27 and a half year. So basically, what we're trying to do is put each item in its proper bucket in order for you, the investor, to be able to depreciate it on its proper timescale, right?
Nice.
So we're putting all those pieces in those buckets, we're breaking it down. So obviously, if you own a retail center and it's got carpet in it, you don't want to depreciate that carpet over 39 years. If you do nothing, you don't do a cost seg study, you're depreciating a 5-year asset over 39 years, which is leaving tons of tax deductions. 5 versus 39 is a massive difference. So you're leaving a lot on the table if you're just straight line depreciating and not doing anything about it. So that's the value in doing a cost seg study, taking the 5-year assets and putting them on a 5-year depreciation schedule, and taking the 15-year asset and putting on a 15-year schedule as opposed to 27 and a half or 39. So you're essentially front loading your tax benefits. You're not gonna get more to do this. You're just taking more early, right? And I always say, you're not doing this for the fun of it. You're doing it if you have tax liability, right? You have tax liability and you need help to reduce that liability, then it makes sense to pay a few $1,000s to do a cost seg study. If you don't, and you don't need any of the losses, then obviously it doesn't make sense. But the goal is to try to front load as much as you can to pay less taxes now, put more money in your pocket, buy more real estate, buy more deals, and keep doing this over and over again. So that's basically basic depreciation. What cost seg is trying to do is identify, we have to do an engineer study of the property. So you have to come and do an actual tour. And like I said, we need to find every window shade. We need to find how many square feet of concrete, how many square feet, linear feet of fencing there is, how many light fixtures there are. I mean, everything, it gets even more complex than that. We'll keep it kind of at that for now, but it can go back to the wiring leading to the light fixture. There's a lot of intricacies, and you have to have trained. This is not something I say, I don't recommend you do this at home, right? It's not a simple formula to just, plug in some numbers online, boom, you have your cost seg done. It's a complex, process, takes many hours for an engineer to complete the study, and their full reports are about 80 to 90 pages long. So everything is accounted for on a property, and it's a very detailed process. So literally dissecting every aspect of the property and trying to front load as much as we can those 5 and 15 years.
Nice. So that was a great high level overview. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you broke it down to a 5-year-old's level with the different buckets. So let's see if my 5-year-old brain caught this. Let's see, on a mobile home park, it's tenant owned units. Would most of that stuff then fall under the 15-year bucket?
Yeah, so mobile home parks, I just want to say one more thing before I answer your question.
Okay.
Just the better part. So we talked about how owning real estate is amazing and the benefits. Then we talked about cost segregation, right? That's even
Mm-hmm.
better. The third step of that, before I get to your question, is bonus depreciation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yep.
talked about the 5 and the 15 year, so that's already great, right? Turning 27 and a half and 39 into 5 and 15 is obviously beneficial, but bonus depreciation, which as we record this at the end of December, I don't know what's being released, but is going down from 80% bonus to 60%. It was any property that was purchased 2017 and 2022. So it doesn't make a difference if we're in 2023 or 2024 now. It all goes back to when it was purchased. So between 2017 and 2022, it was at 100% bonus, which means anything that's 5 and 15-year assets that we talked about, that can all be taken in the first year. So that's obviously a massive
Yeah.
amount and a game changer, right? So that went down to 80% and
It's
is
gonna.
now going down in 2024 to 60%. Now to get back to segue into your question, that definitely affects a lot of the numbers, right? But it affects mobile home parks, RV parks a little bit less. I mean, it's still the same 60%, but the numbers are still fantastic on mobile home parks. And I'll explain why, right? So we were talking about breaking down that Lego structure. The items that you can't accelerate are what we call like structural, right? The roof, the bricks, the foundation, a lot of the items in a multifamily property, right? Go to a mobile home park, right? And you're talking about tenant owned. We'll talk a little bit about tenant versus park owned
Perfect.
homes. But when you're buying, let's use $1 million as an easy example. You're buying a mobile home park for $1 million, right? There's not much structure on the property, right? Maybe you'll have a leasing office or a laundry facility, or those are actually bad for cost sake, right? Because the more structure you have, the less you can front load in that first year or the first bunch of years, right?
Yep.
I've had people say, oh, this is great for, I have 6 buildings and I have storage and I have this and that. It's actually bad, or it's not great for your
It's
cost.
not as beneficial. Yep.
Right. So the least amount of structure you have on a property, the better it potentially can be for your cost, right? So you're buying a mobile home park for $1 million. Let's say the land is 150, 200K, right? So you're 800. What makes up that $800,000? There's a lot of landscaping, there's a lot of fences, and there's the hookups, the pads, right? The electrical, the plumbing. A ton of these items are 15-year property. There's a lot of 15-year property on a mobile home park, which can be accelerated and bonus depreciated in years. So, it's not crazy to see between 50 to 90% of the purchase price items that, excluding the land, 50 to 90% of what your basis is, to be able to be accelerated, either through regular cost seg 5 and 15 a year or bonus depreciation. So, I mean, I'm not promising this to everyone out there, but I've seen as high as 90% of a property bonus depreciate on a mobile home park. And it's, that compared to on a regular multifamily, let's just compare the two, somewhere between 20 and 35% of a multifamily, right? Because you have all the structure, the roof, the foundation, it's 20, maybe 40, 20 to 40% versus like 50 to 80, 90% on a mobile home park. So the numbers are 2, 3, 4x the amount of depreciation per dollar that you're investing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just important to know if you're, putting on your depreciation glasses and saying, hey, I know I need a massive, deduction for this year. I'm looking at this multifamily property. I'm looking at this mobile home park. Not to say invest in the mobile home park if you're not savvy, know how to operate, know how to underwrite, but it's something to consider if you're looking for that depreciation. Hey, mobile home parks are sometimes 3 or 4x the dollar for dollar depreciation as opposed to, multifamily or some other asset classes. So that's, it's sometimes actually, for me, I have clients reach out and they're like, hey, we have this tax liability. We bought 3 home parks this year. Let's do 3 studies, right? And as much as I want to, do 3 studies and, bring in more business, I say, hey, what's your tax liability for this year? What are you looking
Yeah.
at? And they'll tell me a figure and I'll say, hey, based on a proposal, just one cost seg on one of the parks can wipe out your whole liability. You have 3 years of tax-free dollars, right? Just because the numbers are so fascinating on one park, it can wipe out their tax liability just with one cost tag. I'm like, all right, we'll save the next two for next year or the year after that.
Nice.
It's a fascinating asset class for cost tag.
So when you say you break down the value of, I guess the internal components like the plumbing and stuff like that, minus the cost of the land, where's the cost of the land coming from? Is that from the county records?
Yeah, so either county appraisal or an appraisal of it's whatever. The county is usually the go-to source for that.
Okay.
Unless you have other, there are investors that'll break it down themselves on the purchase agreement. Statement will have out the land itself. It gets a little complex. People in the mobile home park space do all these allocations themselves. It kind of gets a little tricky, especially if you're planning on doing a cost seg and you're doing all this allocation yourself on the purchase agreement. It could conflict with the cost seg study. So I'm not saying don't do it, but consider if you're doing all these allocations up front on a purchase agreement, have in mind that that could potentially, cause some issues with the cost seg. But to answer your question, yeah, go-to is usually county records for land value. But obviously we're looking for the lowest possible from a depreciation standpoint.
Yeah. Nice.
And then if somebody does take their bonus in that first year, right now, next year it's going to be 60% of the bonus. Does that mean the remaining 40% will be either the 5-year or the 15-year buckets?
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. So, I mean, I don't have a chart in front of us, but whenever we do proposals, we'll have, exactly what you're saying. 60% of the total amount that we can take will be taken in that first year, and the rest will be just spread out over that 5 and 15 year. So it's all, when we do free evaluations for anybody that's interested. I mean, if it's free, it can't hurt to do it. We'll do the proposal, and then you'll see there, hey, this is how much I can take in the first year, and this is what my year 2 through 15 looks like, and then year 15 through 27 and a half, what does that look like?
Nice.
Yeah. So you'll know exactly how much depreciation you're getting for the rest of your, ownership of the property.
And then I know another question that probably everybody's going to want to know: the park-owned homes versus the tenant-owned homes, and what's more beneficial from the cost seg perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like better or worse. I mean, I know a lot of people don't want to buy park-owned homes because of, dealing with the maintenance and the upkeep, and I know there's banking issues with lenders having trouble with, lending on those. So that's not what we're talking about here. But for the most part, if the mobile home is easily movable, it still has like the hookup and it could be moved easily. We classify that as a 5-year asset, right? I've seen people saying different things on that. The way we look at it is if it could be moved easily, even though it's a residential, asset, it's depreciated over 5 years because it can be picked up and moved very easily. Now, if it's attached to the ground and it's really, there's no, hitch or hookup and the wheels, and it's like really, solidified to the ground, then it would be 27 and a half year property. And then, I mean, it would be like a regular single family house. So if you have vinyl flooring, you have appliances, that would be on a 5-year, right? Light fixtures, all that kind of stuff would be just like if it was a regular home. But, the way we look at them, and it's case by case, but we look at it, the entire asset as a 5-year asset for the entire home.
Nice. So let me ask you this. Let's say you have a park and your tax liability for that year is going to be $50,000. You do cost segregation. You find out that you're going to have $100,000 bonus depreciation. You take 60% of that. So that's $60,000. How, if you only have $50,000 liability that year, is then the rest, you spread that out? Is that what I've been saying? You spread that out over the next.
Yeah, it gets rolled over. So anything you don't take, I mean, let's say you bought a park for $10 million and your liability was $50,000, right? And you did a cost seg study on it and you got, I don't know, millions of dollars in depreciation. you don't have to take that in the first year. It's not like take it or leave it, right? You didn't take it the first year, no more, right? So you can take what you need. You got to get with your CPA, make sure they understand cost seg, they understand the report, they know what your basis is, and then you can take as much as you want. And there's no, I mean, currently there's no, you never know with IRS code, but there's no, oh, you have to use it within this amount of time. So it rolls over to future years to use when you need it.
Nice. And then, so going back to an example, you said, having structures on the actual park is not as beneficial. But what about, like, let's say it's a laundry facility. The actual machinery, though, you're going to depreciate that over 5 years. Is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do an inspection of the entire property and make sure every inch is accounted for. So if there's machinery, like you said, obviously that gets depreciated faster. So, I mean, if you have an office and you have even furniture, right? Furniture can be depreciated, or you bought the property and it came with, desks and whatever it is, cameras, all that kind of stuff. So every item is looked at and put in its proper bucket, like we were talking about before. So, like I said, it's not necessarily bad or good. It's, buy good properties, buy good deals, and then we'll suck as much depreciation as we can out for you guys, and, do our best to get as much as we can accelerated.
Nice.
And another example, assuming we buy a park and the prior owners actually did a cost segregation themselves on the park, is that going to affect our cost segregation if they've already took all the value for themselves, like a bonus? They took that.
No, it starts all over brand new, and I mean, you're buying it at a different price than he did. I mean, I would still recommend you need a cost seg done, to back yourselves up. If you're going to ever get audited or need to back it up, I mean, you can't even if you bought it at the same price as the previous owner did, I'd still probably recommend getting your own cost seg done under your LLC, that you performed. And properties, I mean, unless you bought it the next year, things are always changing. There's different things that are added or removed from properties. You could have added more pads or taken away something. So it's like, to answer your question, even if it sells multiple times within a few years, it starts all over again.
Taking the other perspective, if we have the park and we've done the cost seg and we took bonus appreciation year 1, and then maybe year 2 or 3 we sell it, is there any negative repercussions?
Yeah, so there's nothing's free, right? Nothing's, especially with the IRS, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is ever free. So, I mean, at worst case, I like to call it a free loan from the IRS, right? You are going to have to pay back depreciation recapture, and that's like a whole nother beast that, we could do a whole other podcast on that with the CPA. It's something that I don't really want to get into heavy, but there is, so I would talk to everyone has to talk to their CPA about the implications of personally for them, for their situation, what that looks like, what rate you're getting recaptured at. But, we like to say, if you're going to sell the property in a year or 2, it wouldn't make sense. I mean, I've seen people do it because they just needed the deductions like badly for this year, and they knew. I mean, I've done cost segs on, people that have already sold properties, they needed a cost seg from the year before and it's already been sold, and they still did the cost seg because their CPA told them they needed the deduction. So not to say that it never makes sense, but, we like to say 3 to 5 years old, will make sense. But I mean, this is a longer conversation for you, everyone listening, and their CPA, and doing some more research on depreciation recapture and what that looks like. But nothing's free. You can, the way that a lot of people like to defer that, it's really just what we call kicking the bucket down the road, right? Deferring. It's tax deferral, not getting rid of taxes, right? So I know a lot of my clients do, if they see that they're going to get hit heavy with the recapture, they'll sometimes do a 1031, right? They'll do 1031, buy a new park. That'll obviously affect the basis. So your cost seg, if you did a cost seg on that property after you bought it, your basis is going to be a lot lower because you just deferred taxes from Park A to Park B. So we can't win all the time, right? We try to do our best to use the tax strategy to help us the best, but nothing's free, and this is not just, me giving you, just throwing out money to everybody for free. So,
And then one more follow-up, not to get too
yeah,
much
sure.
into the weeds. This only applies if we're taking bonus. If we do a cost seg and just go straight line depreciation, we should be fine, correct? And there shouldn't be a
So,
recapture.
cost seg or not doing a cost seg?
If we're doing a cost seg, but we're just doing a straight line,
There's
5
there's always recapture no matter what.
Okay.
Even if you're doing straight line, right? So we have three options: cost seg with no bonus and bonus, right? There is recapture on all three, right? So it's something you can't avoid, right? It's a guarantee that you're gonna have to pay some recapture.
Nice. You did mention, Akot, that you could do as many cost segregations as you want. Economically, does that make sense? But would you suggest, if you're buying a park and you know you're going to do a lot of infill, you're going to do rehab and other things, would you suggest doing that cost segregation prior to doing the work or afterwards?
So essentially, the best time to do a cost seg is right after you buy it, right? Because what we're looking at when we're doing a study is already in the state that you bought it, right? If you're doing rehab or you're making the property better, hopefully not worse, right?
Mhm.
If it's deteriorating or getting better, that's not how you bought it, right? So we're looking at, hey, Dustin bought this property for $1 million, right? Less the land. This is what it was when he bought it. Let's break it down, right? If you're starting adding things or things get ruined or whatever, that's not what you paid $1 million for. So ideally, the best time to do a cost seg is pretty soon after you bought it, because that's the property in its state that you purchased it, right? So to answer your question, do it as soon as possible if you know you're going to need to get it done. I know a lot of people wait till December, January, February, March. I mean, I've had people call me a day before the tax deadline and say, can you get this done by tomorrow? Literally. I mean, I once miraculously turned it over in 24 hours just because,
Wow.
it's possible, but it's not something we advise, right? So if you know you're going to get it done, save yourself the headache and stress, of waiting to the last minute. It does take us a bunch of weeks to get it in the pipeline and get it, because actual work done, it takes several weeks. So, don't wait till the last minute, not advisable. But if you are going to do a purchase and then add pads and, improve your roads or put up new fences or whatever, there's a lot of times where you do a significant, massive renovation that could actually call for a second cost seg study. So it's definitely not included in what you bought it for, because that's not what you paid $1 million for, right? So there are times where if there's enough rehab done, it could warrant a second cost seg study, right? So we need to look at, hey, you guys just put in 500K in roads, pads, hookups, you added a laundry facility or whatever you did to the property. We need to reevaluate that $500,000 that you just invested in improvements to the property. So you can do that in year 2 of ownership, and then you can have a whole nother cost seg, bonus depreciation, and depreciation, from adding that in.
Yeah, to piggyback off that. So if you're buying a piece of land and developing the piece of land, would you just do the cost seg after you're done with the development? And then just the cost that you spent, or is it the cost, the value of, or is it just the cost?
Good question. Good question. Yeah. So you do it once it's placed in service, right? So once it's done and it's ready for its intended use, whatever use you're doing, retail, you're doing mall parks, right? Once it's ready for an actual home to be placed on that pad, right? It's now ready for its intended use. It's called placed in service, right? So I know that I have people right now rushing to place properties in service. They're doing new developments, and we've been chatting and saying, hey, can you get that in before, the end of December, so you can place it in service to get the 80% bonus versus the 60, right? So it's sometimes a mad dash toward the end of the year to place properties in service. Same thing with a single family house, or as long as it's ready for its intended use, it's considered placed in service. So now, to answer your question, you do the cost seg study once it's placed in service, and you have, like you were saying, a detailed budget of, we spent $50,000 on X, we spent $200,000 on roads. The better your spreadsheet is, the easier it is for us to perform the study. But once it's done, the work is done, so we can properly tour the property and break everything down. It's, sometimes people are reaching out beforehand. Better to wait till it's basically done and all of the items are detailed on a spreadsheet, that you keep internally. So keep good spreadsheets. Don't just say, I paid a contractor $500K and he did roads, lights, and railings and all these things, right? Better to have item by item price for everything that was, done in the development.
Nice. So my research on cost segregation prior, there's a form 3115. Is that familiar?
Yeah, you trying to stump me here?
So I don't know too much about it. I researched it. This is probably a couple of years back. It was a year, 2. Yeah. Anyways, and there's something like the 2-year rule. What is that? I never got clarification on
So
that.
3115 is basically when you're reclassifying. Basically, if you, let's say listeners out there are listening now, they're like, oh, I never heard of cost seg, right? We need to do one now. It's not a big tax liability for 2023, and they bought the property in 2021, right? You can still do a cost seg. It doesn't reset. We talked about doing it ideally in the year that you bought it, pretty soon after you bought it, but you can go back and do what we call a look back study. So that 3115 form is pretty much when you're reclassifying the asset. So you're going back and you didn't break it down, you just divided it by 27.5 years. You're going back and reclassifying that. So that can be done from a property in 2017.
Okay.
I've done multiple properties in 2017, 2018 that, if you think about it, you're taking about on a mobile home park, 3.5% depreciation a year. So even if it's from 5 years ago, you've only taken less than 20% of your depreciation. So there's still, we can tap into the 80, as much of that 80 that can be accelerated that's still left over. So that 3115 is a form that we actually at Madison, we actually fill that out for you. So there's some cost seg firms that'll charge $500, $1,000 to fill out that form, but we will do it that's something that, you give to your CPA, they're filing the tax return.
Got it. And I just want to make sure I caught this right. If you do a cost segregation, that's not really going to help you out with capital gains, correct?
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on real estate professional status for a minute. I mean, we
Okay.
can talk about this for hours, but so we were talking about offsetting like income that you had on the park, right? $50,000 liability. The amazing part about real estate is if yourself or your spouse can qualify as a real estate professional, and this is for conversation again with you and your CPA. Do I qualify? Does my spouse qualify as a real estate professional? Which is, without getting into details, I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving you advice on this. 750 hours in real estate. Look up what you need to qualify, what considers hours for that 750, and 51% of your time needs to be spent in real estate as opposed to some other business that you're doing. So if you or your spouse can meet those criteria, you can use the losses from depreciation to offset income that you're making. You could be, selling chocolates, you could be, wholesaling or whatever else you're doing. The beauty of that is if you're a real estate professional, you can use those losses to offset even W-2 income that your spouse is making, right?
Okay.
So that's the power of, there are plenty of people that learn about this and I'm not telling anyone to quit their job either, right? But people who are part-time, will, move full-time into real estate for the tax benefits and using these depreciation losses. So that's a powerful thing to keep in mind. How can I use these losses to my benefit? I'm not cash flowing a ton on this property, but I am making a bunch of money doing something else. Maybe it does make sense for myself or my spouse to figure out a way to get that real estate professional status.
So
And
even
then
if
it
my
opens up.
spouse-
What?
So even if my spouse has nothing to do with real estate, but I'm a real estate professional, and she's a high earning W-2, we can offset her W-2, even though she has nothing to do with real estate.
Correct.
That's amazing.
You're married to her, right? You're stuck with her.
Yep.
Do the good and the bad, right?
I like the good.
I once heard somebody say that they wanted to make a dating website, an app linking up real estate professionals and non-real estate professionals for the tax benefits.
That's funny.
I think that'll be the winner.
Yeah.
Next, in regards to mobile home parks, and specifically to a park that's primarily park-owned homes, does the year of the park-owned home make a big difference? How is the value of park-owned homes determined by you or by the cost seg study if we don't actually have on our purchase agreement it broken down?
Yeah, that's a tough question. One of the tougher questions you guys have asked today, but I mean, it's based off of like, I mean, if it's a brand new home, it's obviously different than a, 1964, single wide that's basically to fall into the ground, right? So it is based off of, we need to look at the big picture. If you bought this park for $1 million, how much of that is the mobile homes and what is each one worth, in its current condition? So I hope that answers the question. I mean, we need to see what the value is. A newer home is not the same value as, a home that's 50 years old that hasn't been rehabbed. But you could buy a mobile home that was built in 1960. I mean, you guys probably have seen this or talked to guests and, people that have turned some really nasty things into really beautiful things. So, I did one mobile home flip on a lake here in Texas, and it was not pretty when I bought it. And when I could show you of it, it looked, you can do pretty crazy things even in mobile homes and make them look real good. So you could take a property and make it, from being worth $20,000 to $100,000 too. So it just depends on, what kind of flooring is inside the property. Does it have new windows? Does it, have new appliances, countertops? So everything is looked at, with our, depreciation glasses and evaluated what its proper value is.
Nice.
Your firm would actually help us determine the best way to classify everything to get maximum depreciation.
Yeah, maximum, but using the rules, right? The rules, but try to fight for you and get you as much depreciation. But obviously, we're not going to say a 50-year-old is worth $100,000. I mean, I have seen some funny stuff done on some other cost seg studies or some investors that did some DIY stuff that would kind of blow your mind. So, I wouldn't put it past anybody for making up some stuff to get that depreciation. But, we play by the rules. We're looking out for your best interest. You don't want to do something that is potentially going to hurt you just because right now you could see some major losses. We want to do it by the rules. We're out there to fight for you, but play by the rules. I mean, we've been in business for 17, 18 years and perfect record with the IRS. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with a good cost seg firm that knows what they're doing, that has great CPAs, great engineers, a great team behind them, and is going to back you up if you ever do get audited. And I don't wish audit on anybody in the world, but people do get audited. And one thing that they may look at, not that people always ask me, does cost seg audits? The answer is no, right? Your cost seg is really the way you're supposed to depreciate a property, right? If the IRS tells me, hey, your flooring's supposed to be depreciated over 5 years, I'm just playing by the rules, right? I'm not like doing something funky or illegal. I'm actually doing what the IRS told me to do. So a good cost seg report is they're not gonna be like, oh, Dustin or Ben did a cost seg, these guys are shady, let's do an audit on them, right? So the cost seg itself is not going to be a red flag for the IRS. But if they decide to, audit you for something else fishy is going on, or you just get randomly selected, you better make sure that you got a good, bulletproof report there to back up your cost seg, or else, you don't want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Nice. So I want to touch base on something I think I heard you say. It doesn't matter the mobile home, right? Obviously, it's you're not following like HUD guidelines of, I think it's 76 and below. You can still do them on 60s built as long as it's standing and livable, I guess. Okay. And then is there anything that you guys don't work on or touch if like in a mobile home park, if it has like a lagoon or a waste treatment center, will you even look at those and break it down too?
Look at every type of asset class. I mean, you can try to stump us as a company on an asset class or a property that we haven't seen all the years of doing this. I mean, we do tens of thousands every year. So,
Wow.
I mean, you name car washes, gas stations, ranches, retail centers. I mean, we've done it all, and we have experts that have done hundreds of properties in that asset class for that year. So, you know, there's nothing, everything has a lifespan, right? There's nothing that's like, oh, you know, how many years does this depreciate over, right? Everything has its bucket, like we were talking about before. Everything has a bucket, and we're just there to properly place everything in its bucket. So there's nothing that you could send me, you know, that we won't be able to answer, hey, this depreciates over this amount of time. And there's no asset class that we're like, oh, we've never touched that. We're uncomfortable doing that.
What about cannabis dispensaries? I was just
Yeah, why
curious.
not? I haven't done one personally, but I'm sure
Yeah.
that we've done them. I'm sure that we've done them.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and then where do you operate? Like, what states do you operate in? All states, or is some that you don't operate
Yeah,
in?
so we're in all 50 states.
Okay.
We've done, I have one in Puerto Rico coming up. We've done in
Nice.
Alaska, Hawaii. So there's no place that we can't go. I'm personally in Dallas, Texas. So anybody listening that, you know, is in Dallas, you know, I'm here. We're actually, we have a commercial title company. That's, you know, our office here in Dallas is a commercial title company. We do cost segregation and a bunch of other real estate services. So I'm here in Dallas, but we do studies throughout the country. And, you know, I would say even for my book of business, you know, a massive chunk of it is not here in Texas. So
Yeah.
we're all over the place.
Nice. And what is like the cost of doing a cost segregation? Let's say like on a 100 pad park.
You
What?
saved the best for last, huh? Yeah, so it really depends on the size of the park, how many structures there are, right? If there's 7 buildings and then there's self-storage and there's offices, so no, you know, set price. Everything is evaluated when we proposal. You know, our team of engineers and CPAs it goes through multiple people to give an evaluation. So like I said before, the proposals are free. It can't hurt if you're even considering doing one
Mm-hmm.
to see what it looks like. And then I like to go over it on a Zoom call and break down the entire proposal and show you how it works. So whoever is interested in that, you know, always feel free to reach out. Then in the proposal, we'll have the pricing. You know, so, you know, typical mobile home park is somewhere, you know, in the $5,000 to $6,000 range, something like that. But, you know, it could be smaller, could be bigger, and
Yeah.
a lot of different factors. But you know upfront before you move forward at all what price you're looking at. And we do a whole breakdown of what tax savings value of doing the study. So, you know, I'm not going to tell you pay $5,000 to do the study if you're only going to save yourself $4,000 in taxes or $5,000 that year. So
Yeah.
there's a whole breakdown of what the benefits are doing it, how much you stand in your tax bracket to save, you know, in that tax year. And we go through it and we spend a lot of time. This is not just like, hey, you know, send Eden a property and he's just going to send you back some proposal and then see you later, right? We're here to help. We're here to strategize, figure out, see if it makes sense. I mean, I've been on calls with 15 different investors on one deal, and everyone has different questions, their situation, and there's a lot of complexity. So we're here. We have a great team of CPAs, engineers, like I said, to help through really difficult questions and figure things out. So it's important to have a good team backing you.
So
Even ballpark seems very fair. So
yeah.
anybody listening, I've got quoted rough quoting and they were significantly higher than that. So it seems like you guys are very competitive.
Yeah. I wouldn't say we're the cheapest people out there. We're definitely not the most expensive, but you know, I think we're the best, and we do.
You got a great track record, right?
Yeah, we do a ton in this space, specifically in mobile home parks. We're pretty, you know, we have a big presence in the country.
So would you suggest that if someone's considering this, have their taxes done, their CPA by their CPA, and then reaching out to you, or reaching out to you first before they filed or
Definitely
prepare their taxes?
Yeah, definitely before they're preparing taxes. And
Okay.
you know, better to do it sooner than later. Talk to your CPA and make sure they understand the situation. You know, you're gonna have the CPA is gonna want following your taxes. Whoever's doing your return, have a conversation with them. CPAs are not always quick to respond.
Mhm.
You may have to wait a couple weeks, send them an email, call them or show up at their door. I've heard people literally say, "Hey, I'm literally driving over to my CPA's house right now because he hasn't answered me for 2 months, and I want to know if I should move forward with the cost estimate." So, be patient, talk to your CPA, make sure they're on board with it. You understand,
Mhm.
everything, the implications. Um, and then it's got to be done before. If you want to take that deduction, don't like make up a number and say, "Hey, this is what I filed on my return. Can you back that number up with a cost of the study?" Right? You want to make sure you do it. And I've seen that done too. Trust me. I've seen some funky stuff where people are like, "Hey, I already depreciated $1 million of this $1.5 million single family house. Right? Can you back that up with a cost seg study?" So we can only do as much as we can do. We can't, just use the number that you plugged into
Yeah.
your tax return. So definitely do it sooner than later. Get that proposal, see if it makes sense. And if it does make sense, get it done. Don't like cause yourself heartache. So guessing in April or, whatever if you're on extension, I mean, try to do it sooner than later if you know you're going to be using it.
Nice.
And then for one of them, there was one item you mentioned on the 15-year schedule, which was concrete. And I wanted to ask for both mobile home parks, is that like the pad in which it sits on? And then for apartments, assuming you're doing a subterranean garage, which is a big lion's share of the cost of a construction project, is going underground for that concrete. Are both
Yeah.
of those on the 15-year time schedule?
Yeah, that's land, they're both land improvements, so those would be 15-year assets, so.
Mm.
Well, a lot of people ask me on a multifamily, what's the percentage, right? It depends, you could have multifamily where there's 2 or 3 parking spaces per unit, and some have a lot of parking, so that could be a massive difference on your cost seg. If there's 1 parking spot per unit versus 3, that's 3x your land improvements, right? So those are, on typical per square foot on a multifamily, it's around the same. You're gonna have a small, in 1,000 square foot, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. You're gonna have, this kitchen with appliances. You're gonna have probably vinyl flooring, some light fixtures. So the numbers will obviously change property to property, but it's not drastic, right? What really changes drastically is your land improvements, right? Do you have 50 parking spaces or 150 parking spaces, right? Do you have a fence surrounding the entire property, a metal fence or wooden fence, or there's no fence, right? Just that fence alone could be $100,000, right? Do you have a big old huge sign in front of the property? That could be 15, 20, 30, 40 grand for a sign, right? So a lot of the exterior land improvements can be massive differences cost seg and your bonus depreciation. Just something to keep in mind when you're underwriting deals, looking at properties. I mean, don't buy it because it's got a fence, but you know that you're looking at more depreciation. The more, I mean, you two will never, or anyone listening to this will never look at a property the same. After hearing this information,
Yeah.
you're going to look at a property and say, "Oh, that's more depreciation right there or there." So it's just important to know, not to say that it's a make or break on a deal, but it can't hurt to get more depreciation.
Yeah. So we're approaching an hour. Appreciate your time here.
How flies when you're talking about depreciation, right?
Yeah. I love this stuff. I
Yeah.
geek out on it and I could go on forever. But
Yeah.
so if people want to get a hold of you, Eden, what's the best way of reaching out?
So I'm pretty active on Facebook. I don't think there's any other Eden Markowitzes. So hit me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, also Eden Markowitz. You can reach out to my email at Madison Specs. It's emarkowitz, EMARKOWITZ at madisonspecs.com. Facebook, LinkedIn, and I'll number off for now. But you can always
Cool.
hit me up and we'll schedule a call to talk on the phone.
Sounds good. And then, so we've thrown a couple curveballs your way and you've
Yeah.
smashed them. So I appreciate that. One other question, and I no clue on this. When it comes to syndications and you do a cost segregation, how is that beneficial to some of the limited partners in it?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people are investing in syndications because they need the depreciation, right? So um, it's super important. I'm assuming a lot of people that are investing in deals are waiting for that K1 to come in to see how much depreciation they're getting. So
Yep.
as a GP, somebody who's who's doing deals and bringing in investors. I wouldn't say it's a must, but it's pretty necessary because a lot of your sophisticated investors are there putting into deals because they need the deductions for that year. So, it's definitely important, definitely, if you are raising money and bringing in LPs, educate yourself a little bit on cost seg. You don't need to be an expert. You can call us. We can help you break things down. You don't have to, learn 50 hours on cost seg if you're doing deals, but be aware of it. Know that a lot of your investors are probably going to want that bonus depreciation or cost seg on a deal.
So would you say it'd be beneficial to reach out to you, get a proposal, so then the GPs can actually put that in the OM? So,
yes, I was about to say that. So
yep.
Yeah, if you're under contract and you want to, get investors, chomping at the bit, you can show them, hey, here's the cost seg proposal. This is what we're looking at. It's obviously not done yet, so we may get a little bit more. I know on our proposals, we try to underpromise and overperform. So this is, pretty much a minimum that you're going to be looking at. We may even get more. Obviously, don't pay us to do the study until you close on it, so you won't have an actual report, but you'll have projections of what that'll look like, and then you can put that in your pitch deck, to the investors and say, hey, this is what we're projecting for this year's bonus depreciation.
Cool.
And then one more follow-up question to that with the syndication.
Yeah.
Assuming it's to the LP or the investors and 30% to the general partnership, is that the way the depreciation is split, or is the depreciation go all to the investors?
I mean, there's different ways you can slice it. I mean, it's not a one fit for everybody. So it depends on how you structure the deal. I mean, I've seen some people offer, 2 or 3x, a dollar invested in depreciation. So there are different ways you can structure it. It all is going to flow down through the K1. So, however the partnership is split up, traditionally it's, if you're a 10% owner in the deal, you're entitled to 10% of the depreciation, but there are different ways that you can structure it, and that's for another show.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll have to have you back. And I know you said you got recommendations for CPAs and other professionals. So that's why we want to connect with someone that's doing this business yourself and doing it well. So again, do appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll share your contact information in the show notes when this will be out in the next week to 2 weeks. And anything else before we go, Eden, that you want to touch base on? Anything that could blow our minds before we sign off?
I'll just appreciate being on here. It was fun. Who would have thought that talking about taxes is a fun thing, right? It's not, it's not something that I ever, saw myself passionate about until I realized how much you can help people save money. Help people save money, help reinvest it. We're here to provide for our families. We're here to help, our communities, to help people, to be better people. We're making money, to not just to have fun. We're here to be, passionate about what we do and help other people be successful, help our families be happy, be healthy. And, it's a passion of mine to help people out and see that reality. So, that's what keeps me going. I mean, now, if we were just talking taxes and there was no light at the end of the tunnel, might be a little darker, but, helping people and see them, being successful, growing their wealth in order to, do good things with it. So I appreciate you guys being on here, and keep doing what you do and help grow.
Cool, man. Well, we appreciate it. Yep, that's what this show is for, so we can all grow together and provide for our families and everybody around us. So
Yes, sir.
All right, Eden. Well, you have a great rest of your day. We do appreciate you coming on the show.
All right, guys. See ya.
Thank you.